We also had this year the growing women's movement in WWE. And you're going to have your people who say, oh, this wasn't a buy. This was a sell. I'm sick of hearing of the women and all this nonsense. Not that you have to be a huge fan of women's wrestling, but some of the comments I see are just fucking deplorable. And I look at this and I say to myself, what are some of the things that I myself, in just the last few months, have had the most interest in when it comes to the WWE product? It's Becky Lynch, Charlotte Flair, Ronda Rousey, Asuka, the combination of matches that these women have had going back 3-4 months. The story with Becky Lynch, her change in attitude, all of that stuff. I have taken an interest in more than probably any male-oriented storyline that they've got going on the main roster right now. I've been enjoying Daniel Bryan and AJ Styles, and they've had great matches, but I look at Raw, I look at even SmackDown, a lot of what's been going on there. Nothing has really kept my interest the way that the stuff did. Once Becky Lynch had that change in personality and did that turn, did that pivot, and everything seemed to change for her, and all of a sudden things just became a hell of a lot more interesting. Were it not for the women the last 3 months, there would be nothing on those shows that would really keep my interest at all. So I look at it as a positive. I look at Ronda Rousey being in WWE as a positive. People will complain, oh, she's being protected, she never loses, she's not that good, you're overrating her skills. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. What was it, the Survivor Series review, I think it may have been? Where I went out of my way and I praised that match that she had with Charlotte at Survivor Series. One of the best WWE matches all year. One of the best women's matches they've ever had on the main roster. Ronda Rousey has been, if anything, she has exceeded, far exceeded my expectations. I knew she was a fighter and she was a big wrestling fan, a great athlete. We already knew that. That doesn't automatically make you a good pro wrestler. She could have come in and stunk up the joint. She could have had 2 left feet. She could have been hurting people. She came in, and from day one, from the very first match that she had, she was on point. And people will say, well, that match was rehearsed. Oh, you bet your ass it was. You don't think that her and Kurt and Triple H and Stephanie rehearsed the fuck out of that match for weeks going into WrestleMania? When you walk out there, your very first match, you're in front of how many people were in the building that night? I was there, I should know. Probably 70,000 people, 60,000 people in the building that night. WrestleMania, right? Big stage. Big pressure situation. So many things can go wrong. You've never done this before. You're on live television. You've got time cues. All these things are going on. She's probably taking instruction from Kurt, taking instruction from Triple H, taking instruction from the referee. She was unflappable in that match. She looked great. It was the best match of the night at WrestleMania. And she had as much to do with that as any of the other 3 people in that ring. And still, people won't give her credit. She rehearsed the match. The matches that she had later in the year. The match that she had with Charlotte, it was rehearsed. Really? On what, 1 week's notice? Wow, that's a lot of prep I'm sure those 2 women put into that match. And again, I'll say the same thing I said in my review. Who gives a shit? Who gives a shit? To this day, people will talk about the match that Randy Savage and Ricky Steamboat had at WrestleMania 3. You want to talk about a match that is probably overrated. I'm not going to say that it's not a bad match. It's a great match. But people talk about it so much that, yeah, I do actually think that you could probably argue that that match is a bit overrated the way that people talk about it. That match was rehearsed. Randy Savage, he mapped out every single move and sequence of that match. He would quiz Steamboat. On the fly, he would say, hey, what's move number whatever? I doubt Steamboat ever worked a match like that before. That match was rehearsed. I don't see too many people complaining about it. Hell, 30 years later, people won't shut up about it. Who cares? The only thing that matters is what you do when you step into the ring. When you step between those ropes, you have to perform. You are under pressure to perform. That would be like saying, I have a big test coming up at school, and I'm going to study and study and study, and maybe I even know some of the questions. But let's say I don't. I'm going to study and study and study for this test, and I'm going to go in there and I'm going to nail it. I got an A. I got a 95. on that test? Oh, well, of course you did. You studied. You would never say that to somebody because that sounds ridiculous. That sounds completely ridiculous. So what if she does? Ronda Rousey is one of the great stories in WWE all year. She's having one of the best first years that anybody in that company has ever had. You can make a list. I'd put Kurt Angle and Brock Lesnar. I mean, they're always going to be neck and neck for 1 and 2. You could argue Rousey is right behind them at number 3. Best rookie years in WWE. That's how good she's been. I don't know how long she plans to do this for. There's rumors of her wanting to start a family and have kids. So who's to say how long she's going to be doing this for? Maybe she loses finally at WrestleMania and that's it. It's a 1-year story arc. She goes undefeated all year. Becky Lynch beats her. And she goes away. Who knows? I'll say this much. If she does go away, that'll end up being one of the best first years anybody's ever had in this company. So yeah, I would say that, when people make comments like that, they are being unfair. Because when you argue that she's not as good as you say she is because she rehearses her matches, first of all, you don't know which matches she does and does not rehearse. I'm sure she does rehearse some of them. So do the NXT women, by the way. So if you were a big fan of Sasha Banks and Bayley in Brooklyn or any other number of women's matches in NXT because they're always down there at the Performance Center, they're down there at Full Sail, what do you think? You don't think they rehearse their matches for weeks on end? I don't see people complaining about that. If Bianca Belair and Shayna Baszler go out there at Phoenix next month and they have a kick-ass match, are you people going to complain and say, oh, well, Bianca Belair, she rehearsed that match for 2 weeks beforehand. So, yeah, it really doesn't count. I would love to hear people say the same thing about her. So anyway, good year for Ronda Rousey. We also have the rise of Becky Lynch. Need I say more? Becky Lynch has had a career resurgence in the last few months after really being on the back burner for a very long time. And I think that's why people have really taken to her. She's a likable person. People like Becky Lynch. And for so long, she was just sort of cast aside for Ronda Rousey and Charlotte and, these other, Asuka even, and these other people who were, I don't want to say flavor of the day because that's not fair, but they were the ones who were being focused on. And Becky was almost sort of just an afterthought. And then all of a sudden, a funny thing happened in the spring, really going back to May. She started winning. After being on a stretch of losses for a long time, she started to win. She didn't even have a match at WrestleMania, I don't think. I think she might have been in the Battle Royal. But in May, she started to win. And I pointed this out on the podcast. I said, watch Becky Lynch. Very low key. She's on a bit of a winning streak here. At the time, nobody was really saying anything about it. All of a sudden in July, the announcers started mentioning it on television. And that built up to SummerSlam, and Charlotte won, and we all know what happened there. Becky, beat the crap out of her after the match, and the Barclays Center went crazy. And we were off to the races at that point. And so Becky Lynch has had as good a year as anybody in this company has. Now they're talking about her as being one half of the first women's main event in WrestleMania history. She'll either be a half or a third, depending on what kind of match they do, but I think it's all but guaranteed, barring injury, she's going to be part of what probably will be the first ever women's main event of WrestleMania history. And you know what? It's well-deserved. Who would have expected that? Everybody thought I thought it was going to be Charlotte and it was going to be Ronda Rousey. Charlotte may not even get into the match. There is not a person on this earth who a year ago would have said that. Would have said that it would be Becky and not Charlotte going to the main event of WrestleMania. Or possibly even being the first person to beat Ronda Rousey. Which I think she should be. So she's having herself a tremendous year. She's a lot of fun to follow on social media. And you'll have, the naysayers who say, well, that, call me up when it translates to ticket sales. Or call me up when it translates to high television ratings. You know what? I hope it happens. It hasn't happened yet. Those people are right. There's no evidence that, Becky Lynch and her big push has, amounted to some kind of a bump in business. She may sell out autograph signings and such. But if they continue to push her, at that level, we're going to know pretty quickly, I think in 2019, if she can really have an effect on business. But to me, all I want is to just watch the show and be entertained. She, to me, is the most fun thing to watch on either one of these shows. And until they can find somebody who can sell more tickets and who can move business, because I don't see who that person is right now. I don't know that it's Braun Strowman. I don't know that it's Seth Rollins. I don't know that it's AJ Styles. Maybe it's somebody from NXT. Maybe it's somebody that's not even under contract. Maybe it's Kenny Omega. There's going to be a lot of interesting questions that get answered early, I think, in 2019 about who that next person is in the absence of Roman Reigns. But in the meantime, Becky has just taken this company by storm. You have the first ever Evolution pay-per-view. Part of this whole women's movement in WWE. Evolution, in October, turned out to be one of the best WWE pay-per-views all year. Some people might even say the best. You had the first ever women's Royal Rumble match, first ever women's Elimination Chamber match, first ever women's TLC match, which was excellent. And now, of course, we find out that women's tag team titles are coming back in 2019 after a number of years on the shelf, going back to the late 80s. So this women's movement is not going away in WWE. It's only growing. They're going to be calling more people up, hopefully to the main roster soon. We know Lacey Evans is on her way up and Nikki Cross. And if you're not a fan of the women, that's fine, but you better get used to it, because this is not something that's going to go away in 2019. If anything, it's only going to get bigger.